thank you so much for coming onto campus.
I'm delighted to be here.
So excited to have you. Almost 4 months you've been in office. How have you found it?
It's been really exciting, actually. They did close down for the whole of August. That's called recess. But that was just Parliament closing down, and the news and the work of the government did carry on. So we did lots of scrutiny of what they're doing throughout the summer, and we've been meeting. So I say we, there are 4 Green MPs, which is a real change from just Caroline on her own. And we've spent a lot of time working together, making sure that we're each sharing out the different topic areas. We don't all have to try and do everything. Making sure that we're meeting the relevant campaign groups, talking to people in our constituencies who are affected by those policies that we want to change, and keeping a really beady eye on what the government's up to. There have been some really crucial votes, things like on the winter fuel payment, and two-child benefit cap in particular, where I think all these new Labour MPs who sit opposite us were asked to vote in a way that they wouldn't normally, in a way that isn't, why they came into politics, to take away payments from pensioners or prevent families from really being able to live on the benefits that they get. And it's been really interesting to see that happen. We think the government might be shifting a little bit on the big need for investment there is in the country. But we're waiting to see what comes out of the budget. But we've done a lot of lobbying around the budget. We've written letters about the different taxes they can raise. I've also written a letter from the constituency point of view, the things that people are mainly raising with me here, asking for smaller things, but things up to 2 billion that might be invested in to try and help at a government level, try and help in this constituency. A lot of that stuff comes from young people. I've spent a lot of time listening to young people as well. So yeah, it's a really exciting job. And with 4 of us, I think we can be effective, and also I think with a new government who are just finding their feet, there's lots of opportunities to make changes happen. So yeah, it's really great, and Brighton's been an amazing place to spend my time when I'm not in Parliament.
Has the party had a kind of change of strategy now that you've got your 4 MPs? Have you altered the way that you work in Parliament?
Definitely the way we work in Parliament, yes, because we are a group. We have more rights to be able to speak in debates. We're able to be on committees, particularly for bills. So when bills come through Parliament and Parliament says, OK, yes, this bill can go forward, there's a period of looking at it in committee to see if it's right, to think of amendments, proper scrutiny and consideration of the bill. We can now sit on those bill committees. We're in a bit of a raffle. There's a lot of things that are drawn out of a hat in Parliament, and the smaller parties from the SNP, Plaid, Reform, us, Group of Independents, we all compete for a place on a bill committee, but we've won a place on the Renters' Rights Bill Committee. Carla Denya's sitting on that in a very intensive way and arguing for lots of changes, including changes that have come from the student groups and young people and renters in our constituencies, and it's very exciting that we can do that, absolutely. And nationally, obviously, we did really well. We had a huge vote throughout the country. We won our 4 targets by a lot. We've run them really well, and we are now second in 40 constituencies. So we've got to think now about which constituencies to aim to win next time.
You've spoken previously widely on your campaign about the dangers of Starmer government. Do you have any comments on his premiership so far?
I mean, these votes where there was such a groundswell of support from the public, and you could tell that his party, the backbenchers, didn't want to be marching through that lobby to vote for those things, I think have made people feel a bit less enthusiastic about the leadership style of Keir Starmer than they were pre-election. They were holding out some hope that there might be a change of style, that he was just saying this to win the election. But I think there has been a kind of, an iron hand put on to the backbenchers that they must vote. They've suspended some people who rebelled on some of those issues as well. So it's a real shame. And there was a vote on Palestine as well, where people who then rebelled twice had the whip removed from themselves. So there's that's I think a bit worrying, from the fact that he's got this huge majority. He could be more relaxed about allowing some of his backbenchers to work more to their own conscience. So yeah, his approval ratings are very low. So I think people are very concerned that this isn't going to be the best version of Labour that they maybe hoped there might be. It's going to be one of the worst versions until we manage to pressure them and push them into changing.
So on your Instagram, you're very public about pushing the Labour Party. So you've published letters. So there was one with Carla Denyer criticising West Streeting,
Yes.
And his support of puberty blockers. Have you had a response from that?
We haven't had a formal response to any of our ministerial letters yet, and we are waiting for those. But we also can put in written questions, and there are other ways to put pressure on them. We've put down a lot of motions as well, so what are called early day motions that you gather cross-party support around. There's also cross-party groups called all-party parliamentary groups, which we're joining. So I think that sort of build-up of people writing letters, of people passing proposing motions and bills and questioning his approach, hopefully we will see common sense prevail on that one. But removing the rights of young trans people to delay puberty, it causes problems later in life, and we do know that that's the case.
What are your experiences with working with ministers directly? Is it difficult to actually get responses through? Oh,
good question. I mean, again, we haven't been sitting for that long. And again, there's a ruffle every time you want to ask ministers a question. So the ministers come before the House on a rota basis. So every few weeks, couple of months, you will get the minister, the department that you're interested in asking a particular question. And you submit your question, and then it gets pulled out of a hat or not. I think proportionally I've been quite unlucky so far. But luck is something that evens out in the end. So hopefully I will get more questions. But I've asked a few questions. I asked one directly to the Prime Minister when he put forward the results of the Grenfell inquiry, specifically responding to things in the constituency where people were having trouble getting safety information, any information off their landlords. So pushing him to make more landlords, housing associations in particular, subject to freedom of information, so that residents have the rights to get the information they need to have their own voice heard. That was really good, like directly asking the Prime Minister a question. And he did say he would consider this, so that was good. I put forward amendments to bills. Again, some interested nods from the Minister in question on the rail renationalisation bill. Trying to make sure that devolved areas like ours, so Sussex wanted to take control of Southern Railway or the Thames Link, that we should be able to do that as a local area, and at the moment they've decided to concentrate it on ministers. That might be listened to. The Lords are going to argue about that soon as well, so that's good. And then I asked a question about women leaving prison. There's been a good policy of releasing people from prison who shouldn't really be in prison anymore, to create some space, but also so that they can get support in the community instead. There isn't necessarily the community support needed. So I asked a question about support for women leaving prison, finding housing. And the Justice Minister in question offered me a meeting without me even asking for a meeting. So that was not expected. So that's I've got a date already to meet a minister. So that feels really helpful.
The Green Party was the first English political party to label the Israeli government, as committing genocide. Can you just summarise briefly, why did you decide to do this as a party?
We don't do it lightly. We've always taken a strong stance for Palestinian rights. We've wanted there to be a strong two-state solution there for a long time, and peace. This conflict has been heartbreaking to see break out, and the amount of families displaced, the amount of people killed, particularly the amount of children hurt and bombed, and all of that has been absolutely horrendous, and it clearly breaches international law. The targeting clearly is aimed at creating an area of the world where people who used to live there do not live there anymore, and that is one of the definitions of genocidal action. The International Court of Justice, its interim conclusions are that this seems likely to be what's legally going on. So yeah, we talked about it, and we've actually written that into a statement of policy from the Green Party as well. And we, you know, we don't do that lightly. We did it in all seriousness, because this is the most serious situation we've seen in Israel and Palestine for a very, very long time. And the whole conflict, right from October the 7th until now, has been one where civilians have unnecessarily suffered, and those are war crimes. And we've called that out right from the very, very start.
Why do you think you're the only political party that have been so strong with their labelling of genocide?
Well, I mean, I think there are, you know, the legal opinions coming. The United Nations have spoken out incredibly strongly about this. You know, we may be the only party speaking so strongly in the UK, but the rest of the world, whole countries, whole groups of countries are saying the same thing. It's incredibly alarming from an international perspective. It does need to stop. And we as a government ought to be stopping all arms to Israel on this basis. And we are not. So we've seen some legal advice given to the government. They have taken away some arms licences. They are concerned about what's going on, but not enough to take that strong stance, and they really, really should be. And we're pressing them on that as often as we can.
So you've called out this march to the right, you spoke about in your campaign as well. How do you think we should best tackle this rise of the far right in the UK?
I think we have to really stand up to it very hard indeed. This is, again, something you're seeing in other countries as well, and it is the rise of a new kind of, and it's important to say so, fascism. It's racist, it's white supremacist, it is authoritarian, intolerant fascism that wants to target a whole range of different minority groups. With the tremendous protest there was, a counter-protest there was in August in Brighton, was just great to see, and a really tiny number of people from the far right came out. But online every day, people who might be a bit susceptible to these arguments are seeing propaganda from fascist organisations who, if they ever became in charge of this country, would take away the rights and freedoms of most of us to say what we want. They would target and abuse and hurt a wide variety of minority groups, and it's important we all stand together in solidarity and on the streets in Brighton, you know, defending that one poor solicitor's office that was on the list that might have been targeted. Everyone was there displaying their different identities, you know, and saying we are all standing together against racism. And that's a really strong feeling that we need to keep going, and we need people who are not racist to speak up and be anti-racist and tell those people that their views aren't acceptable. And I think it is important to not tolerate that kind of intolerance, or else none of us will have the freedom to say anything.
And I want to ask you specifically about Tommy Robinson, obviously a very big figure on the far right at the moment. What would you say to people that support him? You know, have a look around you. This is not a man to lionise, to support. He's a very awful, inadequate, racist individual who's trying to play on people's fears and aggrandise himself. Yeah, he's not a figure that anyone should be having as their leader. Please look into it. Please do, and talk to your friends and family. This is the thing about this kind of far right, generalised prejudice. Everybody's got a friend who's gay or black or trans, or, you know, everybody. When you actually know people from these different minorities, becomes much more friendly and resistant to this kind of thing. Just, you know, have a think about how the people you know who might be targeted by these people would feel if you feel like they might have a point, because their point is really to target everybody in the end. Do you have any comment on this ongoing student renter crisis?
I saw this throughout the election campaign. I knocked on all the doors, and in quite a few areas where there are lots of student shared houses, and, you know, that's the affordable accommodation there is for students in the city. There are the lovely shiny halls that are going up, but they are very, very expensive by and large. The way to live affordably is to share a house and rent from a private landlord, and there's far too much poor housing, far too many
issues around repairs, not getting repairs done, and people are scared to say anything because they fear eviction. So that is why the Renters' Rights Bill is so important. It will take away the ability of landlords to do retaliatory evictions. It will try and raise the standards. They will need to register as some sort of professional because it is a job running a home. And renters will have more rights. I stood up in the second reading of the bill and spoke about the thing that's left out of the bill at the moment, which is the need to provide a guarantor. And the NUS have raised this with me. So this is a well-off person who will guarantee the rent for the whole of the year if your landlord doesn't feel like you've got the money in the bank. And so many people who go into student life haven't got money in the bank. They are dependent on relatives to guarantee it. And those people who don't have relatives, people who are estranged from their parents, people who are working class and their parents just simply don't own their own homes, don't have the money to guarantee it, refugees, migrants, all kinds of renters just don't have that. And that is something that's not explicitly being controlled by the bill, whereas rent payments in advance are being controlled. So that's leaving a loophole which a lot of landlords will try to continue to use if we don't do anything about it. But to me, my inbox, my casework, a lot of it is about the damp, the mould, the repair issues, and the ability to stand up for decent standards is really, really important, and that will be there in the bill, and they won't be able to evict you for it. The other thing we're fighting for is proper rent controls, a cap to be put on rents, or a definition of an affordable rent that is below the market. They need to put in a cap that's a bit lower in order that people can properly challenge their landlords.
And there's lots of students saying, well, I'm in my second year, but I can't pay rent next month because my landlord is treating me like this. What support as their MP what comfort can you offer them as their MP just to make it through to Christmas?
I know, it's really, really hard, and so many students are trying to get by on a grant or a loan level that will just about pay the rent and leave them with nothing to live off and pay the bills with. People are working far too many hours. We need better jobs for people. We need a higher minimum wage. The Employment Rights Bill that's coming will help somewhat in making sure that if you've got a job, you can't be left working 0 hours and having that unpredictability, that you will be able to make sure that you can work a proper shift pattern if you want to. Hopefully that will help quite a few students. But I know you also need to work flexibly a lot of the time. So we have to get that absolutely right so that you've got the right to work in the way you need and have the security that you need. But I don't want students working at all. I want the return of grants. I want proper maintenance grants to be there for students, particularly the poorest students. You're part of the Green New Deal because we need you to be well trained up and able to help us build resilience for the future. Climate change is a huge threat. It's coming now. We're about to cross 1.5 degrees in a way that may be permanent and may accelerate. That's a terrifying prospect, and we need people in the best possible shape to fight that.
Perfect, amazing. Well, Siân Berry, thank you so much for coming onto campus and speaking to the Badger. We really thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.